Welcome back to Your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker, the weekly radio show that informs and it educates you on how to buy or sell real estate with Barb Schlinker, the owner of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty and the host of the program. Barb, many home sellers fear the inspection. Many people think that most buyers want to purchase their home as it is, just as it is. What are some red flags that home sellers need to prepare for when they're selling their homes?
Well, Richard, probably the most common thing that would cause a contract to fail would be the inspections. And most sellers are afraid that, what if they come up something with something unknown on their inspection, then they have to deal with that. I was in a house yesterday where they bought it, where the basement was already partially finished, but not with a permit. I said, well, that doesn't stop the buyer from getting a loan. So I don't really think it's an issue, but it could be a problem for some buyers, right? It could give them an excuse to bail out of the contract. I had one recently, when we were talking about building code, um, where the house was cosmetically challenged, and they gave a price concession for that reason. And but the seller had hired a professional company to finish the basement. They did that. Sellers don't typically get in the construction game, so they assume the contractor was doing what they were supposed to be doing. And it turned out the contractor never pulled a permit. So I see this all the time on roofs. I see it on basement finishes, water heater installations, things like that, where the seller's like, I can do this, no big deal. But the problem is technically those things require a building permit. So if you have to go back after the fact and get a permit, it could be a little bit more expensive. So this buyer was going to walk away over the basement not being permitted. And I'm like, yeah, but it's fine, it's functional. You're already given a substantial discount on the price. So initially the seller said no, but then they pushed back, and the next thing the buyer's agent did is she got on the phone and ratted out the house to regional building. Then she sends me a text that says, I talked to regional building and they said that house is uninhabitable, and they red tagged it. Red tag means it's unsafe. And I'm like, what? Because they hadn't been in the home. What is she talking about? I said, what kind of stunt are you pulling? Well, I'm not pulling a stunt. I was just asking questions. I'm like, yeah, right. So I took my text, I marched it right down to regional building and showed it to him. And I said, did your company, your inspectors say this about this house? And I spoke with the manager there. His name is Mark, and he goes, no, we don't do that. Or Matt. Anyway, he goes, we don't red tag homes. We don't deem them uninhabitable. We would not do that. And I actually talked to the inspector that this agent talked to, and she said the same thing. Now, they did put a note in the file that they were aware that the basement wasn't finished. And when I asked the inspector, wasn't finished with a permit, I asked the inspector, so, um, did you, what would make you, you know, put this note in the file? And she goes, oh, well, I was looking for real estate. And she said she was looking on the MLS, which is odd. Most buyers don't search on the MLS. And I'm like, why would you be looking in the MLS? Oh, well, people are looking for homes. I'm like, okay. Anyway, um, what ended up happening is the seller decided, okay, fine. They went down to regional building. They sat down with them. They explained to them. They hired a contractor that they thought was doing everything they were supposed to be doing, but he never pulled a permit. And they were willing to pull a permit, and they negotiated with them. Normally it's 3 times the cost of the permit, but they got a little bit of a discount on that. And then they just brought in inspectors to check to see if the work was done to code. And if it wasn't, they had to correct it. So it could open Pandora's box if that area is really bad, like not done to code. The very first home I ever sold 1,000 years ago had this really cute little sunroom built on the back. And the question was, well, have you ever built anything without a permit? The answer was yes. So I told the seller to call regional building, and he came out and said, that's not to code. You need to tear that whole thing down. So we go back to the buyer, and the buyer's like, don't touch my sunroom. I want that sunroom. Leave it alone. So it really depends on what the buyer wants. The lender's not going to make you tear it down. It's just a county code requirement. So sometimes the agents will just draw a line in the sand to try to fight for their client without really, knowing is that really what the buyer wants, or are they just trying to get stuff for the buyer to make themselves look good? I see that way too much. But there's a way to work these things out, and we know how to do it. In general, buyers will try to get things, corrected if there's broken stuff, which makes sense. A lot of times the sellers don't know certain things are broken. So if their inspector discovers it, they have a professional come in and check it out. That's okay, but it does say in the contract the home is sold as is, where is, with all its faults. However, they could do any kind of inspection and they can ask for stuff if it's broken, and that is a point of negotiation. So there's lots of different systems within the house that they're looking at. And cosmetic stuff they should not be asking for, but things that are truly broken, like the water heater failed or electricity is unsafe. Probably one of the more common things that get tagged besides roofs in this climate are the electrical panel. Richard, have you heard of a Federal Pacific panel?
I have, but only through you. And then once I heard it from you, I talked with other people, and I guess it does pop up because some of them are a little bit older, and
Yeah.
there's a question as to how safe they are.
Well, they're in about 30% of the homes. They were very commonly put in homes back in the 50s and 60s, and even as late as the 80s. We saw some homes that had this brand of electrical panel. And if you go online and you research it, it will show you that if the circuit is overloaded, then it may not pop like it's supposed to and could cause fires. So there's all these nightmare stories online, and most of the inspectors will use that to convince the buyer to try to negotiate to get a new electric panel. And nowadays, some of the electricians won't even certify these. I just had a client that I saw their house in advance. I said, that's going to get tagged on inspection, guaranteed. And it turned out it wasn't just the panel, it was the pole that comes in, and all the electrical really had to be upgraded to make it to code, which they took care of that in advance, which is a good thing. Those kind of things you don't want to find out about once your home is already under contract and you're in the middle of negotiating to try to keep a buyer on the hook, because the buyer is going to start having doubts. Well, maybe I shouldn't buy this home. Maybe I should go buy a new home. And the builders right now are giving away a lot of incentives in order to buy their homes. So the typical high cost things that you should check out before you put your home on the market are things like the roof, the furnace, the electrical panel, the water heater, all those major mechanical things. Also, sewer and septic. Sewer lines in particular, since we don't really have termites here, we don't have mold that much here, but a lot of the inspectors will come along and they will run a sewer scope through the line to check. They'll do a video to see, okay, is the sewer line fractured? Are there any blockages down there? Because that could be a very expensive repair, anywhere from $8,000 to $13,000 to deal with an old sewer line. The newer ones, you don't have to worry as much about it, but it's good to get ahead of those things and don't wait until the last minute, because it just puts the whole deal in doubt, is what I'm thinking. Septic is a whole nother issue. If the county requires that anytime a real estate that has a septic system changes hands, it has to be inspected. What the county cares about is whether or not the septic system is contaminating the groundwater. However, there's usually when a septic company will come out and look at it, they're looking for a couple things like the baffles, the lids. Some people's lids are actually buried where they have to dig a hole to pull the lid off. So a lot of times they'll recommend, but not required, to put a lid cover or a riser over the top of that so you can get to it. But probably the biggest ticket thing would be the leach field, the drainage fields for the septic system. If those aren't working right, that could be very expensive to repair. So I would get ahead of those for sure. And you just want to make sure that when you have an inspection, no house is perfect, even new homes, you want to be ahead of that. So what we recommend to our sellers is maybe they consider getting we call it a certified pre-owned home, where they do a pre-inspection. We have the roofer come out, take a look at it. We have a septic guy look at the sewer line or septic, and just get ahead of that problem. So if you are thinking of making a move, give us a call, 719-301-3900. My name is Barb Schlinker, and we're talking about things that could cause contract failures. And next up, we're going to talk about the best solution to pass your inspection. Richard?
You're listening to Barb Schlinker of Your Home Sold, Guaranteed Realty. And if you're interested in selling your home and you want to contact Barb, give her a call, 719-301-3900. Now, Barb, we're talking about how to prevent a buyer from walking away from Colorado real estate contract. Barb, what are some other home inspection issues that often come up?
Well, for me, the roof. It seems like 2 out of 3 listings have to get roof repairs, roof replacements. So that is something in the off hail season is a good time when the snow's not on the roof to have somebody come out and check out the roof. Some of these roofers will do it for free. Whoever put your last roof on typically will do it for free. You want to know in advance if you have that problem. That gives you time to negotiate. And these, in the state of Colorado, I say it all the time, there is no license to be a home inspector. So these guys aren't qualified to do anything. They get an online certification if that makes you feel any better. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes they bring these ridiculous gadgets. I had one guy show up at a house with this mold wand, and he's walking through the house wanding. He's like, "Oh, this house has mold," and caused the buyer to walk away. But I don't think that's the way you test for mold. So there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens. And I've had one guy that tested carbon monoxide with his gadget, and it turned out that there was something wrong with his gadget. And it was a brand new furnace, so there's nothing wrong with the furnace itself. So getting a pre-inspection will get you ahead of any issues that are coming up, because especially if you have to do big ticket items like a roof or sewer, septic, those take time, either dealing with the insurance companies or getting permits and bids and all that. You want to get ahead of that actually before you go on the market. That way you can put your house on the market with confidence that hey, we're good to go. They might ask for a minor thing here and there, but we're going to pass our inspection. It's going to be fine. So if you'd like to talk to us about how to make sure your contract doesn't fail, we try to keep ours together as best we can. Give us a call at 719-301-3900. I have over 28,000 buyers in waiting looking for homes right now, plus our cash buyers. So we could sit down with you, give you a plan to get your home ready for sale. So just call us at 719-301-3900 or go to barbhasthebuyers.com. Richard?
You're listening to Barb Schlinker of Your Home Sold, Guaranteed Realty. She's the host of the program, and if you are thinking of making a move, simply call Barb, 719-301-3900, or visit barbhasthebuyers.com. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll be discussing how much money do you need to make in order to buy a house in Colorado in 2025, plus Barb's hot new listings. You don't want to miss those.